Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to this special edition of The Price for Freedom. Of course, throughout the day, as it is being October the 7th, we are bringing you programming to mark the 1 year of the start of the genocide that is currently still occurring in Gaza. And of course, you will be seeing various panel discussions and interviews that are happening. And from a South African perspective, of course, they've led the way in the solidarity for the people of Palestine, various political parties. You've seen marches happening across South Africa. You saw a march that happened, a massive march that happened in the city of Cape Town on Saturday. Now, joining me is one individual that, of course, has been part of a department that has been really taking the fight, especially against Israel, in the International Court of Justice, and that's none other than the International Relations and Cooperation Department. And joining me, I'd like to welcome its Deputy Minister, Mr. Alvin. Mr. Boytes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here on this special edition on Hilaal TV. Okay, now it's an absolute pleasure having you on. Mr. Boytes, you're struggling to think that this has actually been a year since this genocide has started, and the work that the International Relations Department has been doing has really been at the forefront of the solidarity for Palestine.
South African government is really global solidarity. And when we speak about global solidarity, the struggle for self-determination of the Palestine people becomes obviously the pedestal of that type of a thinking. Secondly, their struggle against the apartheid ideological orientation as practiced by the Israeli state is a plight that we as South Africans know very well, given the fact that we have had the unique experience of suffering, obviously also under the hideous crime of apartheid. So our solidarity with the Palestine people, it's it's concrete, it's an emotional solidarity given our common history and our common experience.
Mr. Boytes, just reading the President's newsletter today, and of course he does one every Monday, but today being, of course, October the 7th, which started the genocide in Gaza, a lot of it is centered around how South Africa have really stood up. This tiny country in the southern tip of Africa, and it's made such a gigantic leap in everything that it has done. From, of course, the marches, the protests, the civil society groups that have stepped up. I mean, as an individual that works in DIRCO, talk to us about the impact that DIRCO has made, really, in this solidarity for Palestine and the work that has been done in the background in really making sure that they have stamped their authority within this.
Well, Mr. Patel, let me first, express gratitude to the unflinching commitment to the cause of the Palestine people as espoused by President Ramaphosa. No head of state ordinarily would have taken such a decision because, remember, he is the incubator of our foreign policy. And upon engaging the president of South Africa, he has been unequivocal that we must maximally utilize the global governance institutions to bring the full might of the Israeli defense force and the Israeli state to a halt, in relation to the genocide that they have perpetuated and the consequent enlargement of the genocide, such as we have obviously witnessed, notwithstanding the ICJ decisions. Obviously, DIRCO, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, are the chief implementer of the policy as set by President Ramaphosa. And we have a very capable, a conscious foreign service. When a clinical instruction came from President Ramaphosa that we need to look at measures and new mechanisms to bring about cessation of hostilities, to work for de-escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, and to work at some mechanisms that would ultimately result in a two-state solution for the Palestine people. We then came up with utilizing both your International Criminal Court, your ICC, and the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, as force multipliers to bring about, a public optical illustration of what actually, ordinary Palestine people are undergoing on a day-to-day basis. So the stories, the lives, and the deaths of the more than 42,000 Palestine people is not a death that will be left, untold. We have an obligation as a champion of global South solidarity to ensure that the unwritten stories of the more than 42,000 Palestine people that have been massacred through a genocidal action of the state of Israel becomes known in the International Court of Justice, which is actually the World Court of Opinion.
Mr. Botas, obviously you said that the champion of the global South. Now, many political parties within the Progressive Caucus in the National Assembly have criticized the executive for not passing that the motion that was taken last year to close down the Israeli embassy. Talk to us about that. Is it as plain cut to close down an embassy? What are the diplomatic steps that need to happen for that to occur, given that there has been that motion that was passed last year in the National Assembly?
Yes, no, thank you very much, Mr. Patel. I must indicate to you that everything that we do on behalf of the Palestine people as a government is informed by what the Palestine people themselves want. The first issue that we need to be unequivocal about is that the solution to self-determination is the two-state solution. We have in 2018 already recalled our diplomat, our ambassador from Tel Aviv, and since that time, our Tel Aviv office has been headed in Tel Aviv by a chargé. So that is what we have done from our side, and subsequent to the 2018 decision, Mr. Patel, we have recalled the entirety of our diplomatic mission in Tel Aviv. Of course, there is a call for us to severe diplomatic relations with the state of Israel. It is my submission that those calls doesn't necessarily take into consideration the consequence thereof for a two-state solution. What we want as South Africa is to have a state of Israel that coexists in peaceful harmony alongside a state of Palestine. That is what the Oslo Accords are advocating. That is what the United Nations, in as early as 1947, advocated for. That is also what the two-state solution in relation to 1967 speaks about. So that is consistency of purpose. And obviously, a number of solidarity groups in South Africa and also Parliament, have requested us to close down the Israeli embassy in South Africa. And our interpretation, of course, as the executive, is that that will obviously border on the severing or suspensions of diplomatic relations with the state of Israel. And it may just be an antithesis to provide a corridor for South African policymakers to continue to engage with the state of Israel in relation to its responsibilities in regards to the future prosperity of the Palestine people as a whole.
Okay, Mr. Bottas, you mentioned two-state solution. You've been mentioning it a lot. Now, I think you and I have seen Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu drawing maps of him wanting full control of not just Gaza, which is totally flat at this moment, that also of the West Bank, where there are pockets of Israeli illegal settlers coming to these places, taking land. And he's categorically stated also that he doesn't see a two-state solution. He sees a quote-unquote greater Israel. I mean, when we talk of two-state solution, it's very difficult for that to happen, given that the aggressor, which is Israel, is not really looking at a two-state solution, but a greater nation for itself.
Well, I think the first thing that the Prime Minister of Israel must appreciate is that Israel is not the sole inheritor of the world UN governance system. We have 193 countries in the world that are part of the United Nations member states. And that 193 member states, through the United Nations General Assembly, UNGA, have been unequivocal that the conduct of the state of Israel as it relates to its ongoing occupation and land dispositioning of the people of Palestine is against and is in conflict with international law. So that point, we should be unequivocal about it. The second issue, the enlargement of the Nakba through widespread and increased accrual of land of a dispossessed people, it's obviously highly regrettable. It goes in conflict with all relevant international law. It goes in conflict with the Rome Statute, which, for example, holds, Mr. Patel, that any territorial dispute, your sole arbiter and mediator of territorial disputes within the UN system is the International Court of Justice, your ICJ, and the court has been unequivocal that the conduct of Israel as a state is tantamount to illegality. It's illegal. Secondly, you have seen the ICC have again confirmed that the criminal indictment against the Prime Minister of Israel because of the conduct and the orders that is granted to the Israeli Defense Force, your IDF, goes against all normative frameworks, all value systems of the United Nations, and is tantamount to amount to criminality. So we want to use October the 7th as a day to once again call on the Prime Minister of Israel to allow a immediate de-escalation, engage in a process of immediate ceasefire with the ultimate objective and aim to engage in peace diplomacy with a peace-loving nation in the form of the Palestine people.
Mr. Bottas, that's where I want to bring in the International Court of Justice case. Of course, December last year, it was brought in. These are hearings that started in mid-January. We have seen two judgments that have been passed. Of course, one saying that on prima facie evidence, there is a genocide happening in Gaza, and of course, two which happened in May, just before the general elections here, where it said that Israel needs to halt its violent conduct within Gaza and the West Bank. Israel has completely refused these rulings that have been made at the world's top court. How much of a frustration is it that you've got the West, who are also at the same time not pressurizing Israel to abide by these International Court of Justice rulings, given that this is from the highest court of the land? Talk to us about that, because it just seems that it's a blatant ignoring from their side with regards to these judgments.
Yes, well, Mr. Patel, let me say the conduct of the West, and in particular P5 members of the UN Security Council today, 1 year after the commencement of the 7th of October genocide, it's to a large extent different to where it has been. For example, we have seen the UK, we have seen France, that has been unequivocal that they are reviewing their original decision to continue to supply arms and weaponry to Israel to obviously utilize against the people of Palestine. So you have seen that last week France has offered that public announcement. And you have seen previously, 2 weeks back, the UK have also indicated that they will put in some restrictions. So that's positive. Both the United Kingdom and France, actually, when you look at the ICJ advisory opinion, and when you look at the issue about Palestine statehood, the resolutions in UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, obviously we have seen a shift to understand that the original intent of the Israeli Defense Force have completely changed, and they are obviously more conscious of the fact that there is legal consequences that may arise from the ICJ advisory decision. And it's for that reason that, you know, we are elated in South Africa that countries such as Norway, such as Ireland, such as Spain, have joined the other 143 UN member states to recognize formally Palestine statehood and their quest towards Palestine sovereignty. So you have seen a positive shift from the side of the West. We are obviously continuing to engage through diplomatic tracks with our counterparts in the USA, because we do appreciate that America have a unique role to play to bring about a de-escalation. And we continue to impress here in South Africa with the ambassador of America about, you know, that unique role that comes with different responsibilities as it relates to world peace and security is concerned. And we'll continue to do that because we have been, you know, through our peace diplomacy and have been able to accrue a number of different knowledge streams, Mr. Patel, understanding that only through ongoing engagements, persuasions, ultimately there will actually be a shift. And it's for that reason, for example, that the last UN Security Council decision on the temporary ceasefire and allowing humanitarian aid through the Rafah crossing, the USA have not exercised its veto. And that became as a result of ongoing diplomatic engagements with the USA. And like I've said, we are elated of, you know, the views of the UK and France that understand as peace-loving nations, they have a very pertinent role to play in relation to the Middle East peace process.
Mr. Bottas, I only have about 2 minutes. I just need to get this question through to you. Of course, the memorandum had been filed last month. In 2 minutes, can you just sum it up for us? What's the next step with regards to the lawyers from South Africa and DIRCO in terms of the presentation towards the ICJ? If I stand to be corrected, it could be happening later this month. Talk to us about that in just 2 minutes, please.
Well, I think what the process is obviously it encapsulates what we call scientific evidence. It is accompanied by graphical and detailed illustrations, and we speak here about forensic evidence to ensure that what we have said is being committed as it relates to a genocide. The artifacts and the character of this evidence that we have produced in the form of tens and thousands of paperwork will substantively complement our view that the genocide is being perpetuated. And in fact, Mr. Patel, as we speak now, you have seen actually the enlargement of a genocide against the people of Palestine. So that is where we are with our legal team. We are, conforming to the regulatory requirements of the ICJ. And then obviously there will be a particular period where there will be a further exchange of information because I think in this case, the side that are in conflict with the law is the Israeli government. They would obviously also be requested to provide a more substantive body of evidence that seeks to debunk what the South African government are submitting. And I think from there, the engagements will then undertake. So that is the broader process. But be it as it may, Mr. Patel, you can be fully confident, the Palestine people can be fully confident that we are making a substantive evidence-based case that genocide has been perpetuated. And like I've said, in fact, you have now seen an enlargement of that genocide.
Mr. Bottas, thank you so much for joining us here on the special edition on Hilaal TV. We hope to speak to you immediately after that next round of ICJ arguments that are going to be presented. Thank you so much for joining us. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
That's Alvin Bottas. He is the International Relations Deputy Minister joining us for the last 24 minutes just to talk about, of course, the work DIRCO has been doing at the ICJ and marking 1 year since that start of the genocide in Gaza. From myself, Ras Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.